Namaste and good afternoon. We are very much in the second session of the literary conference on environment and literature. In this session, we will have conversations and have writers from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. First, I will request initiate discussion between Shakhawat Hussain Sahab and Fakhrul Alam Sahab, writers from Bangladesh.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Shakhawat Hussain. I teach English literature at North-South University in Dhaka, Bangladesh. It gives me an immense pleasure to be a part of this conference on environment and literature, as well as be a part of this conversation where I'll be with Professor Fakhrul Alam, who taught me actually personally. I have taken a good number of courses with him while I was doing my undergraduate studies in Dhaka. So probably may I also request Professor Fakhrul Alam, sir, would you like to say a few words about you so that our might know?
Well, yeah, I'd like to begin by thanking Ajit ji and Sahitya Academy for organizing this. And I must say that I am a frequent visitor. I've been with FOSWAL for a long time now, many years. And it's a pleasure to be here, even if it's virtual in any way. But I retired officially from teaching in Dhaka University in 2017. But I have gone back to Dhaka University. At the moment, I'm supernumerary professor, and I'm also the director of the Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Research Institute for Peace and Liberty. So I have two roles in Dhaka University. So that's my professional, affiliation. And what about you, Shakhawat? You North-South, right?
That's right. So thank you, first of all, for introducing yourself. I repeat, I teach English literature as a senior lecturer at North-South University. Now, if we may proceed about the conversation. Professor Fakhrul Alam, would you like to tell us first about your research interests and background, please?
Well, I started by working on Daniel Defoe and colonial propaganda from a post-colonial angle, very much influenced by Edward Said. And that was my primary area for a long time. And then before that, actually, I did a master's dissertation on Melville and the city. So Herman Melville is also one of my first love, you might say, research wise. And then I moved on, did a lot of work on postcolonialism and R.K. Narayan among Indian writers. I did a lot of work on him at one point. And then I gravitated towards translation. I translated the great Bengali poet Jivananand Dash's poems and then worked on Rabindranath. And at the moment, I'm working on Jivananand Dash, Rabindranath Tagore. And I've also translated the man we call Bangabandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his 3 English works. And so I do a lot of translating, I do a lot of editing, and I do a lot of academic writing. And I've done it for many years now. So that is all I have to say about me. What about you? What are your research interests?
Thank you for asking me this question. I actually take some interest in the representation of animals in literature, as well as environment. Yes. What you might also, I imagine there is a following question: what makes me interested about these animal studies or environment? Theoretical discussion and reality. These 2 factors make me interested in animals and environment. In this regard, I fondly remember when I personally attended your classes as a student some 15 years ago. You would tell us while interpreting texts that great literature teaches compassion. Such teaching inspired and still inspires me to go beyond what is obvious. To give an example, in the poem The Hunt by Jivanananda Das, the great Bengali poet. A deer or a stag that survives the attacks of a cheetah succumbs to the guns of humans. Jivanananda Das, in his poem, The Hunt, regrets such brutality, and accordingly, reading such texts inspires me to be compassionate towards the non-human living beings too. Non-human living beings. I'm borrowing this phrase from Jacques Derrida. At the same time, cruelty against animals in real life around me also inspires me to look at the non-human living beings representations in texts critically. In all, I mean, this theoretical discussion as well as, I mean, what I discover in reality, they inspire me to discover what's happening to animals as well as environment in literary texts. I mean, I'm more interested in the literary representation of these two. And I believe these two are very important to understand environment, nature holistically. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a question or an observation or anyone, so if I may ask you another question. In fact, I had a question in my mind while you were responding to my first question. I wanted to ask you, what have you been working on lately? But you've already answered that question.
Well, no, not really. I haven't answered that.
Yeah, would you probably elaborate on that, please?
Well, I haven't really answered that. That was on my interest. You asked me about my interest. But actually, the last 2.5 years, I've been working very hard because in Bangladesh, as our friends in India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bhutan will know, and Nepal, that we had Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's centenary, and then we had Dhaka University's centenary, and I'm very much linked to Dhaka University in all kinds of ways. And then we have been celebrating the golden jubilee of our country's existence. And I was working in a number of book projects. I was editing, I was copy editing them. I was editing them, and I was also contributing to them in all kinds of ways. So the last 2 years, I sort of moved away from mainstream literature, and I did a lot of other work. At the moment, I'm beginning work, and I have been doing some work on partition, and Rabindranath has been a constant in the last 20 years. And I'm beginning work on a paper on Rabindranath and as a polymath. I've been invited to write this paper, and so I'm gathering material at the moment. And so Rabindranath and also Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, I have been writing about him the last year or so, and I will continue to write about him in the future. So at the moment, and perhaps partition literature, that's another area of interest that came up in the last 3-4 years, and I've written a number of papers on that. So I might just continue to work in that way. And I do a lot of translating, especially of poetry and songs. So I do that just for myself and share it with readers, and I will continue to do that in the future. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. Are you working on anything? A paper, research paper, an essay, or a poem or something?
Yes, I often write poetry. Yes.
And you sing?
Sorry, sir?
And you sing?
Well, I do sing, but I hope not here. If I may ask you another question. Since this conference is on environment and literature, do you have a work that you can talk about and writers who have influenced you in this regard that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think I can answer that easily. I worked on Melville and American Romanticism, and my doctoral dissertation was on the city. And Melville is very sensitive to the degradation of the city. And of course, all of us here know about Moby Dick and his love for the open spaces and the sea and so on. And he has a novel called Israel Potter, which just shows how dirty and ugly industrialization has made London in a historical novel. So I started there, but in Foswal, in 2012, I read a paper in Lucknow in a first world conference, and that was on Rabindranath and eco-consciousness. And studying Rabindranath, coming close to him intimately, I've been always aware of Rabindranath's love. And I've worked on Rabindranath in many capacities, but I think overall is Jirananda Das. It's pity that most people outside Bengal don't know his works, but all of his works are about the environment and about the beauty of the environment. And because he was displaced by partition, he moved to Kolkata. There was not only a nostalgia, at the same time, there was a kind of a contrast that he always presented in his poems between the beauty of Bengal, of rural Bengal, and the ugliness of the city. Rabindranath has also done that, and I've written about that also. So those are the two writers that I've worked on. But I've also worked on others, in passing. So I have been working on environment and literature for a long time, one way or the other, I would say.
Thank you. Finally, would you probably like to conclude this conversation by reading one of your favorite translation works related to environment? Because we have been talking about Jivanananda Das, Rabindranath Tagore, and others, and you've been working on them. So would you like to probably conclude by reading one of your favorite translation works?
Well, here's a poem that I translated just about a month back by Jivanananda Das. And it's, again, as I was just saying, he was displaced. Partition took him to Bengal, from East Bengal to Calcutta. And he was always missing rural Barishal, which is where he was from, and not very happy with Calcutta. So you'll understand this from this poem. If I get to live forever, in Bangla, Ananto Jibon Pai Jodi. If I get to live forever, then forever I'll be all alone. If I return to the paths of the world, I'll see green grass sprouting. We'll see yellow grass scattering, the sky whitening in the morning, like a tattered munia bird, breast blood stained in the evening. Again and again, I'll see the stars and view a strange woman untying braided hair and leaving, alas, her face devoid of traces of the setting sun's soft glow. If I get to live forever, forever I'll walk the ways of the world all alone. If I ever return to the world's pathways, I'll see trams, buses, dust, innumerable slums and broken bowls too, dark and dirty lanes, fights, people swearing, squinted eyes, rotten prawns. I'll see a whole lot of things interminably. And yet all this time, I won't get to meet you again for eternity. So that's my poem. Thank you. And are you writing anything on dogs? We still have 2 minutes. And animals and anything that you're doing.
I mean, I do write essays and I also publish articles. Yes, on animals, dogs, yes, where I basically argue for the rights of the animals. And once again, I use this phrase from Jacques Derrida called non-human living beings, because when we use the word animal, we are knowingly or unknowingly establishing a hierarchy between humans and animals, where humans are the superior ones and the animals are the inferior ones. So I'm moving on actually, and I use the term non-human living beings. In my writing, I do argue for the rights of the animals. Also, in my academic articles that I'm writing at the moment, I try to find out from texts how they have been inferiorized by human beings for hundreds of years. Of course, not all of them, but a good number of texts have been inferiorizing animals for hundreds of years. Because of such a representation, I used to also ignore that animals also have emotions, feelings. But thanks to my discussions with you and many others, and that I'm trying to go beyond what is obvious. So that's all from my end. So you are probably trying to say something.
Yeah, I'm just saying our time is almost up. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Ajit Ji, the Foswell staff, and Sahitya Academy for giving us this opportunity. Thank you all very much.
Thanks to all from me too. I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Sir, will you please unmute yourself? Thank you, sir.
Thanks for reminding. Thank you, Professor Fakhrul Alam Saab and Professor Sakhawat Hussain Saab. In the next segment, we will have Sri Lankan writers, respected Kamala Vijayaratne in conversation with respected Chitra Jayathilake. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor to accept the invitation from the Sahitya Academy and the Foundation of SARC Writers and Literature from India to interview Mrs. Kamala Vijayaratne today at this conference. My name is Chitra Jayathilake. I work as a senior lecturer at the Department of English and Linguistics of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Colombo, Sri Lanka. Although Mrs. Vijayaratne is well known to many in this audience, let me begin our discussion by giving a brief introduction about her. Mrs. Kamala Vijayaratne is a reputed, award-winning Sri Lankan writer in English, a poet, short story writer, and a novelist, who has published 10 collections of poetry, 3 short story collections, and 1 novel. She's also an educationist who has contributed immensely for more than 50 years to the field of English education, both as a teacher and as a researcher, especially in the field of English literature education in Sri Lanka. Madam, you have been writing poetry for almost 40 years. Your first collection of poetry was published in 1983 and the latest in 2021. As readers, we have of course seen and identified diverse themes in your poetry. We would also like to know your thoughts, your insights about the major themes running through your poems. Madam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jayathilake. I'm privileged indeed to be interviewed by you. I had the pleasure of teaching you long ago when you were a very young girl. And in a way, I think I'm fulfilled that one of my students is interviewing me. Thank you. And I would like to, before I begin, I would like to thank first of all, Ajit Ji, the creator of this tremendous literary gathering, and also the Sahitya Academy of India. Coming back to you, yes, I have been writing poetry from 1983. Actually, I have been writing earlier than that, but the first collection of poetry was published in 1983. And since then, it of course certain gaps, because I think writers, I have also said in at another interview, that a writer's work does not flow like a river. It sometimes, there are moments of whirlpools, there are stagnant, stagnant points where the water doesn't flow. Then there are waterfalls, and of course, you manage to flow, the stream goes on, but it's never a direct flow. So mine has been like that. I started, I think, talking about change. So change is a very important theme in my poetry from beginning to end. And also war. I couldn't really overlook the fact that we have had a 30-year-old war in this country. So in most of my poetry books, you find I am talking about war, either the battle, the battle about the battle-worn soldiers, about the civilians, about war makers, and of course, the people who suffer from the war. Then also about women, because I am a woman. It's, I suppose, in you, like when you write, the woman in you comes to the surface. So the problems that women face, partly because our society is still, you will say, conventional, and women find it difficult to break free. Also about women who have become free. And of course, in the 30-year-old drawn out war, the sufferings of the women as wives, as mothers, and as daughters. Then I have also written widely about the environment, the pollution of the environment, the actual violation of our environment, the devastation of the rural areas, the devastation of forests, the devastation of animal lives, and the destruction of the total environment, the replacement of villages by urban areas, the urbanization, the problems arising out of urbanization, and also most recently about the trauma of the COVID, the violence that has surfaced as a result of it, the strife and the conflicts that I find in society. So those are the major themes that I have coped with. Also, of course, family relationships, parental love, children's love for their parents, the softer side of life. I think I have dealt with all these in my poetry.
Yes, madam. Thank you very much for letting us know the diversity as you understand in your poetry. And moving from there, could you also talk about your transformation from a writer doing poetry and to prose, because you have shifted from poetry to prose. You know that your novel, An Untold Story, was published in 2020. And could you please talk about what motivated you to do so, and how do you understand this transformation in yourself as a writer?
My first collection of short stories was published in 1999. So from 1983 to 1999, I wrote mostly poetry. But as I told you, the changes in my society, the increasing conflict, the war, then the changes, especially the terrible urbanization, that took place with a vengeance, the violation of our natural environment, I found that poetry was not enough space for me to write. I needed a larger space. There was a bigger narrative, and I had to address that. So that's why I think I started writing prose. Strangely enough, I have got more awards for my prose than for my poetry. So my first collection, entitled Death by Drowning, it's about, the first story is about a woman, in fact, a simple woman who tried to be different. So that kind of narratives, in societies like ours, I think all of us, all these countries in the SAARC region, women have the same problem. You are expected to toe the line. You are expected to be conventional. The moment you try to be different, then you have issues, you have trauma. Sometimes it ends in tragedy. So this is about a simple village woman who drowned because she tried to be different to the others. So that kind of situation, and also the others, as I said, the escalating war and the resulting tragedies that took place in society, they couldn't be simply, to me, couldn't be transmitted in the form of poetry. Because I have got used to writing short poetry. You know, my poems are rather brief and I try to capture the moment. So into those poems, this kind of large tragic situation, this kind of human condition could not be squeezed through. I found that it's not sufficient. The communication was not sufficient. So I started writing prose. And then the first one, the first collection was followed by, of course, it took me another 10 years to write my second collection. And that was called 10 Stories. And there again, I address similar incidents, similar events, because Dr. Jayatilaka and I share a certain background. She also comes from rural Sri Lanka. I also come from rural Sri Lanka. And women have issues which are, I think, shared by all the SAARC countries. We are sisters, I think. Like in marriage, how selective the families are. Of course, things are changing now. There's much more freedom to the modern girls to select their partners, and parental interference is very much less. But when we were growing up, maybe like before, about 2 decades before, girls from our kind of background, they did not have that freedom. So my second collection, 10 Stories, deals with that kind of situation, the feudal hierarchical society where women were terribly protected, but at the same time constricted. And so I had to deal with that kind of situation, especially women's situation, and also the change in the background, because the feudal society was gradually giving way to a more commercialized, more, if you like, egalitarian society, but a commercialized society. There was democracy, but the democracy was not widely spread. It was not widely practiced. So these issues, the political, social, and economic issues, had to be dealt with in prose. I tried to capture them, of course, in certain other anthologies. The anthologies I produced between 2000 and 2020. Try to capture some of these, but as I said, unless you write long narrative poems, and this is not the era for long narrative poems, in fact. So you have to fall back on prose. That's why I shifted from poetry to prose. And even the short story didn't seem to be enough for me, sufficient for me. I found that I needed larger space, a longer narrative. That's why I started writing my first novel, entitled An Untold Story. It's about the war, in fact. I had a tale to tell, because the characters, the two main characters in An Untold Story, one is a Tamil boy, the other one is a Sinhala boy. Sri Lanka has these divisions. I think all of us have. I mean, in Bangladesh you have, in India you have, I'm sure in Nepal you have. These divisions which we are trying to overcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam. And can you also let us know your identity as a writer, especially how you are different from other Sri Lankan writers in brief? Could you please tell us?
I think I try to be as honest as possible. And I am not a writer who writes for awards, because I have found that the award givers expects you to address certain themes. Like, as Fakrul mentioned, I think before me, writers are basically compassionate. Your skin is very thin, I think. That's why you respond to people, you respond to situations. So I am not a feminist, although I am very sympathetic towards women. So I don't write about, women in that sense, because I think it depends on individuals, it depends on certain societies. Like where women are trampled, where they are suppressed and all that. In Sri Lanka, we don't have a society like that. I think we respect our women. We have honored our women. And Lord Buddha gave the best example. He accommodated both men and women, treated them equally. He recognized that women had the intellectual power to attain the highest level of intellectualism, that is arahatsi. So Sri Lanka has always honored women. So
Thank you very much, madam. I'd love to, of course, to extend the discussion, but as time is limited, and thank you very much for the informative and insightful discussion. Thanks for the platform, and I wish you all the best. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks. In the last segment, we will have our dear Bhutanese writers, Sri Rinzin, in conversation with Namgyal Peldon. Let's welcome.
Good afternoon.
Namgyal, please go ahead.
Leslie. Thanks to Shahid Academic and the Foundation of Sakla Writers and Literature for giving us an opportunity to attend online literature conference. I'm Namgyal Peldon, and Dr. Rinzin and two of us will be representing Bhutan on the literature talks. Let me introduce Dr. Rinzin. Dr. Rinzin is a prominent Bhutanese author, poet, and scholar. He worked as a member of Parliament, National Council of Bhutan. He was a lecturer, agricultural scientist, manager, management consultant, and writer during last 2 decades. His debut book was The Talisman of Good Fortunes and the Stories from Rural Bhutan. He has authored a novel, Dipa Bondipa's Relatives, in 2016, a collection of his own poems, Dewdrops, in 2018, and a number of later children's books. His poems have been widely published in over 70 international anthologies, journals, and magazines. As a scholar of applied science, Dr. Rinzin has authored and published over 2 scores of research papers, training materials, and books in country and abroad. He served as a focal person for rangelands of Bhutan to the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, Kathmandu, Nepal, and a focal point of scientists of Bhutan to Agriculture Information Center, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Dr. Rinzin has earned 5 academic degrees in multiple disciplines, including agriculture science, business administration, business management with public administration, and literature from Australia, Bhutan, India, and the Philippines, with various awards for academic excellence. Currently, he serves as the Chief Country Coordinator for Bhutan for the Foundation of Sak Writers and Literature. Dr. Rinzin is a present Executive Director of Bhutan Transparency Initiative, a civil society organization dedicated to enhancing good governance and preventing and combating corruption in Bhutan. He holds numerous honorary posts in various international humanitarian, peace, and literary organizations the world over. He has been honored with numerous international awards in literature, peace, and humanity. He is also the chairperson of the Executive Committee of Bhutan Civil Society Network of all the civil society organizations in the country and vice chairman of Bhutan Country Coordinating Mechanism for Global Fund for TB, Malaria, and HIV/AIDS. He is also recipient of several awards like, let me mention few of the awards like Nanji Naman Literary Prize 2020, Naji Naman Foundation for Gratis Culture, Lebanon, and etc. And this is about the brief description of Dr. Rinzila. Now,
that was a long description. Thank you so much, Namgye. Namgye Pelden is a poet. She has published one poetry book already, and she writes constantly. But by profession, she's a banker. So she works for one of the largest banks in Bhutan, that is Bhutan National Bank. And we have been in conversation before. Thank you so much, Namgye. And before we go to our conversation, I would like to thank Ma Ajit Kaur and everybody at Poswal and of course all our friends at Sahitya Academy. Thank you so much for having us. Namgye.
The first question. Environmental conservation is a national priority and one of the 4 pillars of our development philosophy, gross national happiness, GNHG. Our constitution mandates that we maintain a minimum of 60% of our country under forest cover at all times to come. Do you think that we will be able to do it in near future, and why?
That's an interesting question, Namgye. I worked for Ministry of Agriculture for about a decade, and before that, I was a lecturer at one of the Natural Resource Institute in Bhutan, where I briefly taught environmental science as well. So this is an interesting question, especially because I was the Constitution was passed when I was serving as a member of Parliament. So very interesting question. One thing is that it's a constitutional provision that we maintain 60% forest cover at all times to come. Now, this is not a choice. It's a legal provision, a constitutional provision. Therefore, it is the moral responsibility, a fundamental duty of each and every Bhutanese to ensure that Bhutan maintains 60% at least forest cover at all times. And I'm very confident that we will be able to do this. For instance, look at this. Let's look at the statistics. As of last year, now forest cover, there are various ways of calculations. If you calculate just by tree canopy coverage, we have 71% forest. Now, if you include shrubs, we have 83% coverage. And the most beautiful thing about Bhutan's conservation policy is that we have 52% of our total, land area under protected areas like biological corridors and parks and things like that. So we have dedicated more than half the country for environmental conservation to protect, various flora and fauna. We are also very strong on, maintaining forest coverage. Logging was banned in 1999 itself. Logging export of logs was banned in 1999. And now, every now and then we have events whereby we keep on planting trees. For instance, when was that? In 2012, we broke the Guinness Book of World Records, which was set by India in around 2012. We broke it in 2015 by being the country who planted the maximum number of trees in one hour. we planted about 49,000 trees, I guess, within 1 hour. So we hold Guinness Book of World Records there. We are also known for, declaring that we will maintain, we are carbon negative. So we will maintain carbon negative position for all times to come. We declared that, our Prime Minister, then Prime Minister declared that during the COP19 in 2013, I think. And last year, a project was started planting 1 million trees, and they are going to do it within 1 year. No, within 5 years. Now this year, just this month, plantation of 1 million fruit trees all over the country has been started, and this they are going to end within 3.5 months. So we have so many things like this. Every event we have plantations. So plantations going on during our Prince's birthday celebration. I think it was before last year. Everybody planted trees. So we are very strong on this. Therefore, I have no doubt that we will be able to maintain this constitutional provision. Namge.
Okay, thanks for highlighting the possibilities that we can do in the future. It is really nice to hear more through your experiences as the NC of Bhutan, as well as the lecturer in one of the universities in Bhutan. Now the second question, you were a lecturer and also an agricultural researcher. What is your take on organic farming in relationship to environmental conservation and sustainable food production?
Organic farming basically it's a technique whereby we try to maintain ecological balance and produce food. Now, the basic technique is to ensure that pests and diseases are kept under control and soil fertility is at least maintained or enhanced. So organic farming basically does that by applying various interventions like crop rotation, minimum tillage, water and soil conservation, minus use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Therefore, it is obviously environment friendly because it helps conservation of biodiversity. In fact, it enhances, it is said, as experts say that organic farming enhances biodiversity because we don't poison the air, we don't poison the soils, we don't poison the water. Therefore, we in fact conserve all life forms, fauna and flora, in as well as on and around the land. Therefore, it is obviously environmental friendly. And when it comes to food production, sustainability of food production through organic farming. Organic farming is a medium and long-term strategy to ensure that we can sustain food production. Therefore, in the long term, a lot of research, from all over the world suggests that in the long term, organic farming is the most sustainable way of producing food for the world. Now, let's look at conventional farming. For instance, especially in those farming where we use excessive heavy machineries, we go into intensive farming, monocropping, and things like that. We take a lot from the soil. We put in chemicals which are poisonous to a lot of flora and fauna, but we do not return most of the organic materials that we take away from the soil. Now, some scientists, they even believe that maybe another 50, 100 years from now, our soils, which practice conventional farming with the use of heavy machineries, these soils may not be fit for agricultural production at all. The soil fertility will be totally lost, and most probably they might become even deserts. Therefore, if we have to sustain food production, I think organic farming is the solution for the world. Namge?
Organic farming in relation to environmental conservation, sustainable food production is important in a small country like ours. Thanks for sharing your idea about sustainability in Bhutan through organic farming. My third question, you write a lot of points to promote environmental conservation, peace, and humanity. Would you like to recite one poem for us?
I was thinking you might ask. So here is one which has already been published. I think it was written in around 2019. To outlive our own flaws. That's the title. In the solitude of my room, my heart I try to groom, to forget everything for just a while, laying aside life's every selfish game. But my soul questions my own quest. How can you think of taking rest when turmoils and disasters plague the world and countless images of wrongs get unfurled? Natural disasters here, environmental crisis everywhere, failed governances we can't bear, humanitarian crisis that raise every hair. Peace and happiness we all seek, yet in vows of humanity we are weak. Rent-seeking in governance sacred, self-seeking in all truths naked. We are only one species among countless life forms, yet millions of them we have rendered extinct. Submerged deep in our reckless mundane norms, oh, how horrendous indeed is mankind's imprint. All resources of Mother Earth we have looted, her air, water, and soil we have polluted. Nature's all wondrous laws we have defied, nurturing climate change like a new bride. Only living in human coexistence lies our future. Selfish, mindless deeds will upon us bring doom. Mother Earth will outlive all our flaws. Wonder if we can outlive our own. Thank you.
Wow, such a beautiful poem. Your poem on promotion of environmental conservation, peace, and humanity is a very beautiful and really inspiring for many of
Thank
us.
you. Thanks a lot. Well, the session ends here. Our time is up. On behalf of Foswal and Sahitya Academy, I heartily thank the dear writers from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. The session ends here. Let us look forward to the next session, which will begin right at 3:05 p.m., which will have fiction readings. Thanks a lot.